The following program, The Russ Belville Show, is intended for responsible adults only. We advocate to the repeal of marijuana prohibition for adults. We discuss the science, culture, and controversy about America's marijuana laws. We do not advocate any illegal activity and encourage all listeners to learn their state and federal marijuana laws. Opinions and claims made by guests and advertisers on The Russ Belville Show are their own, and The Russ Belville Show cannot be held legally responsible for their validity or reliability. Viewer discretion is advised.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
From the promise of legalization.
And I think that we need to rethink and decriminalize our marijuana laws.
To the agony of prohibition.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
The Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
Yeah, I hear you had a question for me.
Now, here's your host, Radical Russ Belville.
We love it.
All right, good day, tokers and tokettes, and welcome to the show. It is Wednesday, March 26, 2014, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. I'm coming to you live and direct from Smyrna, Georgia, where I'm hanging out with Big Daddy Fink. You can probably say hi, Big Daddy.
Hello.
You can hear Big Daddy in the background, and also Michelle. We're just hanging out here, awaiting my flight home to Portland, Oregon tomorrow morning. It's at like 6:15 in the morning Eastern time, and that means getting up about 4:30 and getting through Atlantic traffic and off to the airport, and it's going to be something else. So we just decided we'd crash out here and hang out and do the show, and then from here maybe get ourselves a bite to eat. So stay tuned. We've got a wonderful show for you today. More of our coverage of the Southern Cannabis Reform Conference that took place this last Saturday at the Georgia Tech Hotel and Conference Center. We've got cannabis therapeutic specialist, Dr. Dhanabalan. She did a presentation that was basically an introduction to the endocannabinoid system and how cannabis works within that system. We've got that slideshow for you at the second half hour coming up here to take up two segments at the end of this first hour show. Dr. Uma from the Southern Cannabis Reform Conference. Then, as we move into hour two, the Toker Talk Radio Hour, we've got video of Major Neil Franklin, the Executive Director of Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, his presentation at the Southern Cannabis Reform Conference. And I have to say thanks a lot to Major Franklin as well for all his kind words for my presentation and work. So thank you so much for that. We'll follow that up with a panel that was a look at the racial undertones of the drug war, addressing things like Michelle Alexander's The New Jim Crow. We had a representative from the ACLU on board there. We talked to Latino activists, Asian activists, African-American activists. So it was very good to get those perspectives on what we're doing here on this war on certain American citizens using non-pharmaceutical, non-alcoholic, tobacco-free drugs. Also on today's show, it's Irie Wednesday, so we get to speak with Gordon Green, who brought us some fantastic coverage from Spannabis. And if you missed it, you can check out the Toker Talk Radio archives if you're a VIP member, and you can listen to all 5 episodes there. So check that out on our website at 420radio.org. Gordon will be calling in with a great reggae tune for us today for Irie Wednesday. Also, in Behind the Headlines, we told you yesterday about the American Academy of Neurology coming out in favor of cannabinoids for multiple sclerosis. We're going to dig deep into that. We'll be right back.
Friendly sponsors. Support these advertisers because their ad money goes straight to the Russ Belville Show. You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
Cannabis Outreach Collective is an alternative health and wellness option located in Gladstone, Oregon, that serves patients in the Portland area and beyond. We are a full-service alternative health and wellness collective accommodating patients with natural, organic, holistic, and homeopathic remedies, nutritional guidance, advice, education, and medical cannabis, fully in accordance with Oregon OMMP law. You can find out more about Cannabis Outreach Collective on Facebook at COC503 or by emailing cannabisoutreachcollective503@gmail.com or by telephone at 503-853-1319. Check out our menu on Weed Maps and visit Cannabis Outreach Collective today. You can get 420 Radio on the go with the Ustream video app for Android and iPhone. Go to rad-r.us/420Ustream or just click the Ustream app icon for Android or iPhone below the live radio feed at 420radio.org. When you are starting up a medical cannabis business, you don't just want any attorney. You want a fired-up lawyer who understands the needs of cannabis consumers. The Law Office of Lauren Vasquez is your fired-up lawyer for the cannabis industry. Lauren Vasquez knows the details of California marijuana law from both a personal and professional angle. Lauren Vasquez rose from the ranks of college normal activist to become one of the Bay Area's best marijuana lawyers. Visit her website, fireduplawyer.com, or call 1-855-MMJ-LAWS for more information. That's 855-665-5297 for Lauren Vasquez, your fired-up lawyer, or email firedupLawyer@gmail.com. The number again is 855-MMJ-LAWS, 855-665-5297 for your fired-up lawyer, Lauren Vasquez. Lauren Vasquez is an activist attorney you can trust. Call today.
This is your 420 Radio News for Wednesday, March 26, 2014. I'm Russ Belville. Most Americans back marijuana sales, but not in their backyard. This is from NBCnews.com. A CNBC All-America survey finds that 56% of Americans would view it as acceptable if a business sold marijuana in their city or town, assuming it was legal in their state. Support, however, declines to 48% when asked about a business selling marijuana, quote, in or near your neighborhood, end quote. In the CNBC poll, a majority in each of the country's 4 geographic regions found it acceptable for marijuana to be sold in their hometown. Support was weakest in the South, but 50% still found it acceptable for pot to be sold. In the West, 66% found it acceptable. Views were most positive among Democrats, independents, and those ages 18 to 34. The least supportive groups included those aged 65 and older, Republicans, and Tea Party members. In general, those with at least some college education were more supportive of marijuana in their town than those with just a high school education or less. However, support was fairly uniform across income groups. Oregon marijuana legalization measure backed by national funders may soon begin petitioning. From the Oregonian. Backers of an Oregon marijuana legalization measure received some welcome news from the state Supreme Court this week. No one had filed a legal challenge to the ballot title for the latest version of their initiative. That means they can soon complete the paperwork, allowing them to begin gathering the 87,213 signatures needed to qualify for the November ballot. Attorney Michael McNichols of Canby had appealed an earlier version of their measure, Initiative Petition 37, and filed comments with the Secretary of State's office objecting to the newer measure, Initiative Petition 53, filed by New Approach Oregon. But he didn't appeal this time. Both versions of the measure would allow 21 and over adults to possess up to 8 ounces of marijuana. New Approach Oregon has received $96,000 from insurance magnate Peter Lewis before his death last year, as well as $50,000 from the New York-based Drug Policy Alliance. Paul Stanford, who runs a Portland-based chain of medical marijuana clinics, is already collecting signatures for 2 proposed ballot measures aimed at legalizing marijuana. Stanford would allow adults to possess up to 24 ounces of marijuana. Utah to welcome marijuana for limited use from ABC News. Parents of Utah children with severe epilepsy are cheering a new state law that allows them to obtain marijuana extract they say helps with seizures, but getting it involves navigating a thorny set of state and federal laws. Utah's Republican Governor Gary Herbert has already approved the law and held a signing ceremony for about 50 parents and children at the state capitol on Tuesday afternoon. The law doesn't allow medical marijuana production in Utah, but allows families meeting certain restrictions to obtain the extract from other states. The marijuana extract, which some believe helps with the severe form of epilepsy, is produced in nearby Colorado and is designed not to produce a high. Legislation to let kids with epilepsy use medical marijuana advances in Illinois from the Chicago Sun-Times. Legislation to expand the use of medical marijuana to severely epileptic children and to lower the penalties for possession of pot for recreational purposes advanced Tuesday at the Illinois State House. 3 different measures got out of the Democratic-led House and Senate committees with only token opposition to a Democratic-led push to go beyond last August's vote to allow only sick Illinoisans to use the drug legally on a pilot basis. Pushed by parents of severely epileptic children, legislation sponsored by Senator Iris Martinez would permit minors with seizure disorders, including epilepsy, to take a derivative of cannabis. House Bill 4299, which passed 6-0 in committee, instead of getting misdemeanor for possessing up to 30 grams of marijuana, violations would get a fine of no more than $100 with a petty offense on their record. House Bill 5708, possession of less than 30 grams of marijuana, would be a regulatory offense that would still include a fine of $100, but not exist on someone's record. Investigators say marijuana THC extraction the source of a Tewksbury house explosion from CBS Local in Boston. Investigators say a marijuana THC extraction process using butane gas was the source of an explosion at a home in Tewksbury last Tuesday night. 3 people were seriously hurt in the blast, which blew out the windows of the home. Tewksbury Fire Chief Michael Hazel said, quote, "The process was being performed on and around an electric stove within the apartment," end quote. Sources tell WBZ-TV this incident may be the first time there's been an explosion during a BHO extraction process in Massachusetts. This has been your 420 Radio News for Wednesday, March 26, 2014. I'm Russ Belville. Transcripts of 420 Radio News are available at our website at 420radio.org. When we come back, we'll go behind the headlines and take a look at the American Academy of Neurology and their recent review of studies for cannabinoids and the treatment of multiple sclerosis. You're listening to The Russ Belville Show on 420radio.org. We'll be right back.
Hey tokers and tokettes, Radical Russ here to introduce you to my friend Matt and all the staff at Lush LED Lighting. Growing plants indoors can be a rewarding hobby, but electricity bills can go through the roof. Then you have to cool down all those big hot lights. It can drive a grower insane. With Lush LED Lighting, you can solve many of these issues and double your rewards. If you thought LEDs were meet the tech of today, Matt and his scientists have developed the perfect light for flowering plants with far less cost and heat. And the results? Let's just say I appear at a lot of events with the masters of indoor horticulture, and the harvests I saw from Lush LED Lighting were big, tight, sticky, and very effective. Check out LushLEDlighting.com right now and tell them Radical Russ sent you. Double your rewards and lower your expenses with Lush LED Lighting.
Marijuana, do you wanna? Mary, do you wanna? Tonight.
As marijuana goes mainstream, you need to be armed with the facts. Nobody can teach you better than Dr. Mitch Earlywine, Ph.D. You may know Dr. Mitch from his column in High Times magazine or his weekly appearance on The Russ Belville Show. Dr. Mitch is also the author of some of the best books on marijuana science, culture, history, and health, including Understanding Marijuana, Parents' Guide to Marijuana, Pot Politics, and more. Visit Amazon.com and search for Mitch Earlywine, that's EARLEYWINE, and order your books today. You can also contact Dr. Mitch by email at 420research@gmail.com.
Cannabis Network Radio, starring David Kowalski from Tampa, Florida. Thursdays at 8 a.m. Pacific on 420radio.org.
Welcome back, everybody. 15 after the hour. Time for us to go behind the headlines, where the American Academy of Neurology has published a paper showing that cannabinoids can be beneficial for multiple sclerosis patients. This came from researchers at the Oregon Health and Science University's Multiple Sclerosis Center, who examined what they call CAM therapies. That's complementary and alternative medical therapies for the treatment of multiple sclerosis. And they concluded that cannabinoid medicines provide relief from spasticity, pain, and urinary frequency. And however, evidence about smoked marijuana, the jury is still out for these researchers. The benefit for multiple sclerosis is still uncertain. It was Dr. Vijay Sri Yadav. He was the lead author of the study, and it appears in the Journal of the American Academy of Neurology. And the researchers looked at 29 different therapies that they included in their guidelines, and 19 of the 29 looked at cannabis. Some of the other treatments that they were examining, again, these are CAM therapies, complementary and alternative medicines. They took a look at ginkgo biloba, reflexology, a low-fat diet, bee venom, like bees that sting you, bee venom, and magnetic therapy. Well, other than cannabis, Dr. Yadav stated, quote, "There is little evidence for the effectiveness of most CAM therapies to treat MS." So the ginkgo, the reflexology, not much there, but with cannabis, there's something there. The first cannabinoid medicine they took a look at was oral cannabis extracts, which they call OCE, oral cannabis extracts, that contained both tetrahydrocannabinol, THC, and cannabidiol, CBD, right? And they said, quote, "They were established as effective for reducing patient-reported spasticity symptoms and pain," end quote. THC and CBD. Researchers also noted, quote, "THC is probably effective for reducing patient-reported symptoms of spasticity and pain," end quote. THC. Researchers also examined studies of GW Pharmaceuticals Sativex. Now, that's the spray that goes under the tongue. It's sublingual, that contains 2.7 milligrams of THC and 2.5 milligrams of CBD. Studies showed it was, quote, "probably effective for improving subjective spasticity symptoms, pain, and urinary frequency," end quote. But of all the studies, there were only 2 studies to review that had anything to do with smoked cannabis. Now, one of those studies did find, quote, "spasticity reduction in the cannabis group," and that pain, the secondary outcome measure, also improved, end quote. However, the researchers found that, quote, "data are inadequate to determine the safety or efficacy of smoked cannabis used for spasticity and pain," end quote. Now, Dr. Yadav also noted that they, quote, "did not find evidence to show whether the therapies interact with prescription MS drugs," end quote. So, they didn't find that it hurt any of the currently accepted therapies to try cannabis. And when it comes to these oral cannabinoid extracts, the THC and the Sativex, the researchers found, quote, "cannabinoids were generally well tolerated," end quote. And, quote, "no significant laboratory, hematologic," that's your liver, urologic, that's your kidneys, or cardiac changes or differences in vital signs were noted, end quote, between cannabinoid subjects and those receiving placebos. The most common adverse effects included, quote, "dizziness, somnolence," that's sleepiness, drowsiness, lightheadedness, memory disturbance, and difficulty concentrating, end quote. Now, multiple sclerosis is an approved qualifying condition under the laws of all 20 whole plant medical marijuana states and the District of Columbia, though the language does vary from directly listing, specifically multiple sclerosis versus just generally covering seizure and spasticity disorders. And more research on whole plant cannabis is needed to convince the doctors. But I can tell you, the patients are already sold on medical marijuana's effectiveness. And since it doesn't seem to cause any problems or interactions with the prescription drugs, why not give it a try? All right, we got to take a break. It's 4:20. We'll be right back with our daily token.
Have you ever met that funny reefer man? If he said he swam to China, he would sell you South Carolina. Then you know you're talking to that reefer man.
I'm Sub Cool from Team Green Avenger. At TGAgenetics.com, we are working on the leading edge of medical strains. Our strains are rigorously tested for THC, CBD, THCV, and other critical cannabinoids. Know your grow. Check out our genetic diversity at TGAgenetics.com, the home of Jelly Bean, Jack the Ripper, Vortex, and other award-winning cannabis strains.
Support the Russ Belville Show. Text the word Russ to 420-420 and connect with the National Cannabis Coalition. You can also send $10 to the Russ Belville Show right from your smartphone. That's Russ to 420-420.
In the afternoon, if I'm home, I smoke marijuana.
You're listening to Radical Russ on the Russ Belville Show.
Marijuana, yeah. I got my ganja.
Georgia. Hi, this is Willie Nelson, and I need your help. Alcohol prohibition didn't work in the 20s, and marijuana prohibition isn't working today. It's time we stop arresting law-abiding citizens because they prefer marijuana over alcohol. Nearly 2,000 Americans are arrested every day on marijuana charges. We're unfairly destroying the lives and careers of hundreds of thousands of people each year simply because they smoke marijuana. These are not criminals. They're average citizens like you, good neighbors who work hard, raise families, pay taxes, and contribute to their communities. We need your help to end marijuana prohibition once and for all. It's the fair thing to do.
For more information, contact NORML, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. Call toll-free 888-67-NORML or visit their website at norml.org.
Everyone knows music and marijuana go together, so let's wind up our 20 after break with the Russ Belville Show's Daily Toker Tunes, the best in pod-safe 420 music from around the web. Today is Irie Wednesday, featuring reggae, ska, and other world music genres. Now, sit back and enjoy your Daily Toker Tunes.
And it's my last day in the great state of Georgia. I've been in a few different cities now, and I want to thank everybody who was involved in getting me out here. Be flying home tomorrow morning, and we'll have a new live show from Rolla J Studios in Portland, Oregon tomorrow at the usual time. But right now, it's time for us to get Irie, and joining us from across the pond in Spain, we've got Gordon Green on the line. Gordon, how you doing?
Very good, Russ. How about yourself?
I'm doing fantastic, and thanks for all your great coverage of Spannabis. It was really interesting to listen to.
Hey, man, that was all my pleasure. Hope to be doing it again next year for a Russ Belville show on 420 radio. Highlight of my week was I met somebody who I didn't interview. I wish I had. Jane Rosenthal.
Oh.
Lovely wife of our good friend Ed Rosenthal. A great spirit, and the first really nice bud I saw at Spannabis was in the hands of Jane Rosenthal. Wonderful woman.
As it should be. Well, I certainly think we'll have more Spannabis coverage next year, and if I can pull the right strings, maybe even I'll be able to get out there and join you.
Awesome.
That'd be fantastic. All right, so tell us what's new for the Gordon Green's Music Planet, and go ahead and lead us into tonight's song.
Today, first, the schedule this month was a little off because of the death of Paco de Lucia. Put the shows back a week. The first show of the month is usually Intro to World Music. It's like a jukebox of great artists and songs from around the world. And the last show of the month is the Artist Focus, where Gordon Green's Music Planet plays one artist for the entire show, highlighting their great music. This is one of those groups I played today, Zap Mama, and New World from the album 7.
I sat in my room, saw this morning, feeling that I can communicate with you. So I picked up my stars, picked up paper and pen. I know there is causes to defend. Roots will find a way, illuminate the mystery. Return to the source of isn't lost. It's not too late for making a better world. It's not too late for making a new world.
I say good things come to days who really wait. But not to them the really way too late. They see it's never too late for a shower of rain.
The essence of this life we must really explore in order to find peace one day. So I picked up my thoughts, picked up paper and pen. I know there are causes to defend.
See, I love that. Hey, but the good things come to days who really wait. But not them that's way too late, as I would say. So we should forget about the hate and the war and stop penetrating discriminators. I will tell you, no way, baby.
It's not too late for making a better world.
Hey, no, what I was saying.
It's not too late for making a new world.
So let them hear, as I will tell you, baby. Let go with them sound there, bad.
Now everybody stand up and let's spread these words around the neighborhood. Return to the source, all isn't lost. No. It's not too late.
I said there's never too late, as I will tell you, baby.
It's not too late for making a new world.
It is one word.
It's not too late for making a better world. Now the world is changing beyond recognition, and it's not too late. No, don't seal your fate with radiation, with that pollution and all that confusion. No.
It is never too late for us to realize. It is one big word and one people. One love and one unity is our tell you. So we spread these words in our upcoming unity.
While humans have been using cannabis for medicinal purposes for over 5,000 years, medical science is only beginning to unlock the secrets of the endocannabinoid system and the promise of cannabinoid medicines. Join us now for the latest cannabinoid medicine update.
Coming up now, we've got a video from Dr. Dhanabalan on the primer on the endocannabinoid system.
So how does the which are derived from our brain, the phytocannabinoids, which are from our plants, and then the synthetic. When we talk about the synthetic, Marinol is one that's here in the United States, but there's also a new one that has come out in Europe, Spannabis, which is a spray that they're using for patients with MS. And hopefully it will be here and it's going to be in drugstores, but it is also a synthetic form of THC. So the synthetic ones that are here in this country are the Marinol and the Dhanabalan. The problem with this is that the bioavailability, which means that when you take it in, what is really available to you, okay, is only about 10 to 20% when it's taken by mouth. The reason is because it is not very soluble, so it's not able to be mixed so that it can be taken through. It's also metabolized by the liver. And as I mentioned to you, when anything has to go that's taken through the mouth, it goes through metabolization to the liver or the kidneys. When it goes through the liver, again, there's a process. So again, there's damage in that area, and by the time it affects you, it can take from a half an hour to hours later. So it's not something that you say, I'm going to take this right now, as we do with cannabis, and say within 10 to 15 seconds, I will have what I need to impact and make me feel better. And again, the half-life of this is between a half an hour and 60 hours, which means if you took in 10 milligrams, maybe in a half an hour, you might have 5 or 60 hours, which is 3-4 days later, you might have 5 milligrams. So it varies, so there's no consistency with it. And it was prescribed mainly for nausea and vomiting associated with chemotherapy. The side effects were sedation, altered elation, and confusion, which we see, but again, not the same feeling and not the same impact that we have from cannabis. Now, the brain is an amazing part of our body where each part has a function. And again, remember these receptors that we keep talking about. They're in different places, so they're going to impact differently on where they attach. When we talk about the amygdala, there's different portions that we're talking about here. The neurocortex, the amygdala, the hypothalamus, the hippocampus, the brainstem, the cerebellum. Again, different parts function, and this is where the cannabis has different reactions for some people. So when we talk about the amygdala, we can see that it has this portion of emotions, fear, and anxiety. And I'm sure people have told me sometimes people that take THC end up having panic attacks and paranoia. But not everybody experiences that. And some people don't experience it initially, but they can have episodes of it depending on the forms of the cannabis that they use. The basal ganglia, again, movements. So it affects your reaction time of having THC on board. The brainstem, which is the biggest part when people have brain injuries with nausea effects. And this is one of the things I always like to talk about a little bit, is that when we see people with head concussions now, in fact the NFL is talking about using cannabis because it helps with concussions, because this is one of the things that we're learning. It also, with patients that have had head trauma, one of their first signs will be nausea, and which is telling the doctor or the clinic, or should be telling them, that something is happening in the brainstem. It's swelling. This is a concern. The cerebellum is for balance. So sometimes people have coordination problems with THC. Memory information. Hypothalamus is for eating, sexual behavior. So again, increased appetite. Neurocortex is for thinking, feeling, and movement. So sometimes people have altered judgment, and sometimes that's a good thing with cannabis. We want them to stop concentrating on their pain or the events that keep bothering them and not being able to function. Motivation and reward, again, feeling good. This is one of the side effects that we have, or the effects that we get. In the spinal cord, we see the pain sensitivity, and this is where the huge part is. People say, I'm in chronic pain. When you use cannabis, it's not that you're not in chronic pain. The pain is not your first important part of your life controlling you. You can cope, which gives you hope. People are on these medications, and you mentioned even Christina, you're on these narcotics. You're taking them, you can't function, it doesn't improve your quality of life. You're numb maybe at that point. And meanwhile, you've got constipation, the side effects, you can't function, you can't be independent. And these medications not only affect the individual, they affect the families, they affect your co-workers, they affect everything you can do. Now what was interesting is that we started to understand, wow, if this works for this, maybe we should try it for that. And this is what the history that we're learning. People used it in the European times for menstrual cramps. I see a lot of patients now with hepatitis C that use it because of their nausea, their chronic problem, and they don't want the interferon, or they have the interferon. It didn't do anything for them. So they're looking to the other options. HIV, the virus, irritable bowel syndrome. This is something huge that's coming about. It's not just irritable bowel syndrome, but also inflammatory bowel disease, which incorporates Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis. And this other part, GERD. Does everybody know what GERD is? Gastroesophageal reflux disease, heartburn. If you didn't have it, you're going to have it with most of these medications. And that's another medication that they have to treat you with now. And because they put you on an H2 blocker, the normal acid that you were supposed to have in your stomach is no longer there. So now you need an antibiotic. The antibiotic is going to create a yeast infection. So now you need another pill to put in your vagina or something else. This is just an on and on and on going problem. So my thing is, let's try to nip it in the butt and really treat the underlying problem and not the symptoms. And I'm going to talk a little bit more in detail about the other diseases. Just to mention a few here: epilepsy, seizures, spasticity, cancer, and I'm going to touch upon that as well. So we can see here, what we started to notice was the potential uses for marijuana. Multiple sclerosis, ALS, chronic pain, Tourette's. Tourette's is a syndrome that people want to function, and they function with a tic. They blurt out words, they have incoherent actions, but they want to function. So this helps them. HIV patients, hypertension. Now, this is, again, I have patients that are off their blood pressure medications. Blood pressure medications have so many side effects. Sleep apnea is helping for GI disorders, incontinence, rheumatic arthritis, skin infections, MRSA. People heard about this? It's called methicillin staph aureus. We used to treat staph infections. Staph is what's on your normal body. Now the medication that works doesn't work anymore. So now we've created another infection from trying to treat an infection. Superviruses, they're still coming out more and more. Osteoporosis. This is huge for the patients. For women and most people in our 30s, mid-30s to 40s, is when we get the most maximum amount of bone density. After that, it's all downhill. Men are protected a little longer because of your hormones and testosterone. Women, if you're heavier, you're getting protected, but who wants to be heavier when we get older? So pruritus. Pruritus is itching of the skin. People with psoriasis. I see patients with eczema that use cannabis topically, and it works. Diabetes. Diabetes. We have probably almost 60% of our country is obese. Not even overweight, obese. And we're talking about children now, 10 years old, that are diabetic from obesity. Hepatitis C, I've mentioned, dystonia, which is muscle spasms, fibromyalgia. At least every one of you know at least one person in this room that has had fibromyalgia, I'm sure. Is there? Most of you, I'm sure, at least knows one person. Alzheimer's. This is growing. We have elderly patients that are living longer with Alzheimer's. And anybody that's had a family member with Alzheimer's, you know how devastating that is. I have Alzheimer's patients that are functional, off their medications. So now we've learned, I've seen it used for patients that are using it for their migraines. It's stopping cancer. It is curing cancer. People are afraid to say this. Cannabis cures cancer. Cannabis can help prevent cancer. Cancer is a cell gone crazy. Stop making them go crazy. It relieves symptoms of chronic diseases. Alzheimer's, glaucoma. This is where it originally really made its big point, because the first patient that got his cannabis used because of glaucoma. Glaucoma leads to blindness. If you're blind, you can't do a whole lot of being independent. You'll still need assistance. And here we are not only preventing it, we're keeping the glaucoma down to where they don't have glaucoma. Again, we are curing glaucoma in patients. This is maybe not across the board for everybody, but it is doing it for patients. We have seen how it works. Cannabis cures hepatitis. Hepatitis, any itis that you hear, arthritis, osteoitis, bursitis. Itis just means inflammation of. Okay, so hepatitis is inflammation of the liver cells. And again, hepatitis was acquired in multiple ways. People get it from sexual contact, blood transfusions. People don't know how they got it. People got it when it was not just that they were using IV drug abuse, but people had gotten blood transfusions. And back then they didn't check all the blood. Years later, patients come in with non-specific symptoms where they're having nausea, muscle aches, fatigue, and not knowing, show up in the doctor's office, and finally somebody checks them. Because they're saying, well, I never used IV drugs. I never had this. And they've had some exposure, and there is really, on the outside world right now in the United States, there's no treatment for hepatitis C, other than some of these interferons and other things that they're trying and keeping their viral load low. Cannabis prevents diabetes. So if you prevent it, you don't get the disease. If you don't get the disease, you don't get the complications. If you don't get the complications, you don't cost healthcare dollars. So this is not just point A, but it's going to impact this whole Obamacare, I think, as well. I see a lot of diabetic patients that, will say I'm diabetic, but then they have the peripheral neuropathy, the pain that they are unable to control, and there's nothing that they can do. And diabetes right now is not a medical criteria in all states, but the symptoms of the illness are. Now this is huge to show that how one drug impacts the system again, the whole system to work together. It affects from the brain, from your digestive system, to the fat in your body. And the fat in your body controls so many things. whether you need energy or to store energy. It varies. And this is where cannabis is going to be used, and is used, not just for people to increase their appetite, but also to decrease their appetite. So it's not just everybody that uses cannabis has got the munchies. So that it helps in so many other ways as well. It affects the liver that needs to heal. It affects your muscles, so people are able to move. It affects every part of your system. When we talk about cannabinoids, we learn that the cannabis has something like over 60 to 80 different cannabinoids. We have still learning more and more. Okay? This chart here kind of concentrates more on the non-psychotropic cannabinoids. So the CBDs, the big ones that we talk about. And there's lots of different charts out there. Try to get familiar with these. Educate yourself on the products you're using and see how it works for you. So then you can educate some other people. And you can see here as well, even though we've got the CBDs, oops, I'm going to go to this chart because it's a little brighter and I can see better. The CBDs here, huge aspect. Antibacterial, cancer cell growth, inhibits it. Neuroprotective, promotes bone growth, reduces seizures and convulsions. And this is why it's made its name here in Georgia with younger children as well. It reduces blood sugar level. This is how it's helping with diabetes. It helps our immune system. If you're able to fight off not getting sick, you don't have a complication. And that's huge for people that already have an immune problem. If you're diabetic and you catch a cold, or if you have COPD and you catch a cold, your immune system is not able to fight it off. But cannabis helps in that. Reduces inflammation. Artery blockage. It's a vasodilator. It's helping people that have heart attacks. It helps people that have strokes. It helps people with bowel issues, small bowel, contractures, people that have had surgeries, people that have been toxified by their medications from the side effects. It relieves pain, anxiety. It also helps muscle spasms, helps you calm down, treats psoriasis, and it's a vasodilaxant, so it opens things up, gets blood flowing. If you look at some of the other ones, again, there's the CBGs, aids in sleep, CBGAs, again, inflammation. You can see there's a lot of overlap. And this is why I have a concern with these legislative bills that are only going out for one segment. They're not understanding this whole process. They need to understand, it's not just one piece. You can have multiple impacts of it. And I still don't understand why they are so scared of THC. Don't get it yet. But we're going to work on it. Alright, so as far as cannabis, you can take it in three primary ways. You can ingest it, but remember with ingestion, it varies from person to person. You don't know the contents of the product that you're consuming. You don't know if the product is made the same way each time. And you don't know what went into the initial product. So that can vary in time. But they're also having sodas, people are drinking, people are making teas. So there's different variations and combinations. And when I talk to my patients and I counsel them, I'll say to them, there is no one cookie cutter for everybody. What works for Joe might not work for Mary, what works for Mary doesn't work for Tim, or what works for Tim only in the daytime works for Mary at nighttime. It's just a combination. And so what I tell my patients to do is to journal. And I'll tell them, give yourself a journal, give yourself a scale of 0 to 5, give your top 3 symptoms, if it's sleep, if it's joint mobility, if it's just having a quality of life that you feel good that day. Give yourself a scale and see which combinations work best for you. So smoked cannabis is either we are now using the vape pens, you're either taking it through a pipe, through a bong, through a joint, and also the two things in between the smoking and the vaporization is just less irritant. But that whole thing needs to be befundled, because a lot of misconception there that smoking will create lung cancer. Well, the data proves absolutely the opposite. If you look at the general population, people that don't smoke at all and people that smoke cannabis have less cancers. Go figure. And we just talked about that it's preventive against cancer. When they look at tobacco smokers that use cannabis, it's the tobacco smoke, the tobacco tar that's creating the cancers. When you had cannabis, people that used only cannabis, you did not see the cancers. And as much as people say that, smoking, I always put that in because I need to as a clinician that it's an irritant. Anything that becomes an irritant has a potential of becoming carcinogenic on that note as well. When people consume the smoking though, it's a quick delivery system. It's not that they're waiting around to say, am I going to feel better? They're able to take 2 hits, 3 hits, whatever it may be, and within 15 seconds, 20 seconds, they get their impact. So they're not waiting, and it also works well for them. As far as, this is the range of where it's very interesting. When somebody will say to me, the first time I used it, I had no impact. And this is where the receptors have to get evoked. Okay? It's like seeing something for the first time, you might not recognize it. But after a while, even the smell of that object is going to make you know what that object is. The same way the body needs time to recognize it. And the first time, sometimes only 10% of the people actually get the impact. But heavy users get about 25%. So the toxicology of this whole beautiful product is that it's not toxic. It has a wide therapeutic range, and there is no direct deaths from cannabis. And I'm going to reiterate that again later. The fatal dose is unknown. There's been some animal studies that show that maybe 4,000 to 40 times the highest recreation, you would be sleeping. And that's the other thing about cannabis. Alcohol, narcotics, opiates kill you through the respiratory system. They depress your respiratory system. Cannabis does not. Cannabis does not depress the respiratory system, and that is why nobody dies from a cannabis overdose. There's been some implications that it's involved with underlying heart disease and arrhythmias and heart attack. None of this is confirmed, and in fact, it's going the other way. This is a great cheat sheet. Has any of you seen these? How many of you have seen this one? It's great, and this is where I want you guys to get information. I want first for you guys to start with you being educated. Once you're educated, you can talk about it and teach it to other people. But this, I like this sheet, and blow it up a little bit here. And you can see that I'm very color coordinated. And I like to see things and see what is easy to understand. So you can see how one protects against cancer. And this again, if you look down here, you can see that there's more than one type. There's so many different forms that affect anti-inflammatory. So this is where we're saying that we still don't know where all the receptors are. This is why when cannabis is taken as a whole product, it works. You don't have to say pick and choose these things separately out of it. But this is out there, and if you guys have any questions, I am available at the end of this, and we'll be here to talk. There's some amazing researchers that are out there doing work, and I really want to be like the people when you see their names, Dr. McAllister, Dr. Herman Planner, Dr. Manelli, Dr. Guzman, Dr. Abram, Dr. Berman. These are all people that have been preaching, have been trying to put the research out there. We're learning a lot about schizophrenia and cannabis. And what's interesting about this is that a lot of people in the beginning were saying cannabis made me crazy. We're finding out it's just the other way around. Cannabis keeps you sane. And this is just a picture that shows the orange lit up areas where in a schizophrenic patient it's much more lit up. And after the consumption of cannabis it's much more lower. And this came out from a Brazilian study, okay? And for years, faculty argued that there was no reason for cannabis, but that's changing. This is changing everywhere. People are saying there is a cause and we need to do this. The other study that was determined, and it counted psychosis as well, in 2004. A study published last year found that cannabis CBD can improve cognitive function. I have dementia patients that are able to cope and have hope because their symptoms are controlled. A group of Brazilian researchers, Rafael, Quinn, and Fernando, they published in Frontiers investigating the different sorts of treatment that they're going to be looking at for cannabis and cannabinoids. So it's happening. It's going to take time. So this is the main properties of cannabis. If there's 4 properties that you want to understand why it works, it's anti-proliferative against, so it protects cancer cells from reproducing. At the same time, it does not impact the healthy cells. Where we take antibiotics or agents, they don't just say, well, you got this bacteria, I'm only going after that. They just go, that's why broad-spectrum antibiotics kill everything in the gut, and you have to replenish your gut bacteria. Versus, this is working specifically on the cancer cells. It's anti-angiogenic. You need blood supply for something to grow. This specifically goes and cuts off the blood supply for the cancer cells, thereby killing the cancer cell. It's anti-metastatic. You've all heard the word, they've got metastasis to the bone. They've had metastasis to their brain. Metastasis means spreading to another organ. Cannabis helps with that. It's apoptotic, which means induces the cancer cells to seek their own death. What that means is when a cell has lived its life, it's time to be put to sleep. And it knows to put those cells to sleep. And that's another beauty of it. Cannabis has helped in treating melanoma. So I've talked to you a little bit about the brain, which is inside of you, to something as superficial as what's on the
Alright, some great footage there. Alright, well thanks to Dr. Uma Dhanabalan. It was a great presentation there. Primer on endocannabinoid system. Thanks for Radical Russ showing up and doing the news and all that good stuff that he does. I'm a little frazzled right now because we're going to take it into hour 2 with Ganja John and Kaliko. Until next time, everybody, take care of each other, tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at radicalruss.com.
Take a seat, you plant it,
you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth.